Hi, today I'm going to do a little tour of my studio. Some of you have been asking about my keyboard setup, so I thought I'd do a little tour and just go through the keyboards I have one by one, show you a little bit what they do, and I'll give you a little bit better idea of where all these sounds come from. Okay, so let's get started. So first up is probably my favorite instrument of all time, the Fender Rhodes, which is an electromechanical piano, meaning it's got hammers hitting small metal tines, which are then amplified a bit like an electric guitar. So this creates a very sort of bell-like tone, which you'll probably recognize from endless records, mainly from the 70s. So I love the Fender Rhodes just because it's like a piano but not like a piano, and you can either play very gently or with a bit more bite. Very wide dynamic range. Also, I usually put the Rhodes through a old phaser pedal, so to give it an extra swirling sound. So this is without, and this is with. So you can hear it sort of swirling around. And I also put it through a harmonizer pedal, which allows me to have different notes being played at the same time just by playing one note. So this is without, and this is with. I can change the kind of chords that are being played. And the piano is also going through a looper, which means I can create loops on the go. So if I'm playing something, and it'll loop, and then I can play over it. Okay, so that's number one. Fender Rhodes, beautiful instrument, endless possibilities. Next to it, I've got a little bass synth. It's a Yamaha CS01, which is an old, also pretty old analog synth, and I love to use it just as a bass. So for the Rhodes, it adds a nice bottom end to the Rhodes. So that's the Rhodes, that's the CS01. Above it we have a beautiful hybrid kind of instrument called the Roland 505, which is also very old, and it's a string machine but with a lot of twists in it, and so you can have again strings, very symphonic strings, but it also have a very powerful bass sound. Now again, I'm putting this through a phaser pedal, which I can take off here so you can hear it without. But with it you get a lovely swirl. And you can change the amount of strings or bass and different combinations of sound. So it's a very rich instrument, lovely, luscious. And it's also going through a looper, so I can create loops on the go also. So Okay, next as we go up on this stack is another Roland keyboard, the SH2000, which is also quite an old one. And it's a monophonic synth, so it can only play one note at a time. And you've got all these presets here, which are really just to give you a starting point for the sound. So that's a clarinet. You can have a what they call a saxophone, French horn, violin, banjo, etc. And the nice thing about this keyboard is that it's got a sort of pressure sensitivity to the keyboard. So if I just press a note gently, it just plays, but if I press harder, then you can set either vibrato or other things to happen when you press the... So it's very expressive for such an old keyboard. It goes very nicely with the strings. Next up is Korg 700S mini Korg, and it was, I think, one of Korg's very first synthesizers. So all this is from the 70s. All these keyboards here are from the 70s, some earlier and some later, but more or less from the same era. And here we have, I love this instrument because it's very quirky. First of all, you can see the controls are all at the bottom because these were meant to go on top of organs. So people had like organs to play normally, and then they put a synthesizer on top so they could reach the controls from below rather than above. And this has some fabulous sounds. Also monophonic, but it's got some lovely things that were heard a lot on Vangelis albums, for instance, things like this. With a sort of repeat facility. Also, I also put this through a delay, an echo, and also another harmonizer, a bit like the Rhodes. So you can have, instead of just one note, you can have like chords. Anyway, lovely instrument, lots of possibilities. So all these combined, and being all stacked one on top of the other, I can easily go from one to the other. And when I'm improvising, it's great to have all these different colors at one's disposal. Okay, so here we have three synths, and these two are Moogs. This is a new Moog, this is an old Moog. Moog Prodigy, which is again from the 70s, and Moog Matriarch, which is currently in production. And down here we actually have a string synth. You can't see it very well. It's another Roland string synth, organ and strings. Now this is a little bit of a cheesy sounding keyboard on its own. I'll just play. Okay, it's just normal strings. But when you put it through a lovely pedal here, like the Polymoon, then you can get some very nice textures. which can go on and on for a while. So I use it a lot for just creating beds, pads. Now the Matriarch is probably one of my favorite current new synths, and it's got all the beauties of the Moog legacy plus incredible patching facilities. It's semi-modular, meaning that you've got all these little holes to plug things in between each other, or each module can be plugged they all can be plugged together and create different sounds. But it's got a lovely rich sound. But what I love the most about it is the arpeggiator facility, which I use a lot, which means that you can play any chord in any note in any order and you can and it will play in the order you've played the notes. So for instance, and then you can change that. So you've got all these lovely textures, and then I can bring in a drum machine. I use a drum machine called the Electron Model Cycles. It's got some lovely sounds. Then I can play over it with, let's say, the Moog Prodigy. So it's a really nice combination of instruments here, which allows you to do a lot. The Moog Prodigy has a wonderful, typical Moog fat sound. That's wonderful bass sounds. Okay, moving on to the other side of the room. Okay, here we have a new version of an old instrument, which was originally made by ARP. It was called the 2600, and now it's being remade by other companies like Behringer, where I got this from. And they've done a pretty good job at emulating exactly the behavior of the old synthesizer. And so this one is great for doing more experimental sounds. And I use it together with this controller. And there again, you can use it as with an arpeggiator to create sequences. And then you can tweak the sound. And add a delay echo. for instance. Very nice instrument, lots of possibilities. Again, it's a bit like the Moog Matriarch. It's semi-modular, so you've got all these patches that you can connect oscillators, filters in different ways together with other sample and hold controllers, for instance. So it's very complex. It can be very complex, but it's lovely to explore randomly almost the sounds that can come out. To finish on this side of the room, we have a Nord Stage 3, which is really an instrument which is great for taking out on gigs, because it's got a load of sounds in it, and it's got lovely Hammond organ sounds, it's got piano sound. And I won't go through the sounds because it's fairly... And you can use it like a real organ to change the draws here, and accordion. It's got all the orchestral sounds, and so it's really a sort of jack of all trades kind of keyboard. And lastly here we've got also an old Korg micro preset, which was a very simple keyboard, but one which I really like because it, again, if you put it through a delay, it can sound very, very nice. It's very easy to use, you just change the presets here. You can also make noise. Okay, that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this little tour. This is how I play, this is how I make my music, especially when I do my improvisations. I love to set up different sounds on each keyboard so I can go from one to the other without fiddling about too much. And it's a really huge palette of sounds available, and I love those old sounds. I love the analog sounds from those 70s years, because they made instruments which had unique character and were probably just good at doing one or two things, but they did them incredibly well, as opposed to endless million of possibilities, and you get lost in the options. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye.